Hi, everybody. Today's Monday, September 1st, 2025. And our friend Larry Johnson is back with us. Welcome back, Larry.
Oh man, thank God we don't have to deal with that Colonel Wilkerson today. I mean, heavens, the last time he was on, he had the best shirt of all. He wiped the floor with us.
Exactly. Yeah, that was amazing. Yeah,
Sorry.
he smashed us. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard, there's been some criticism, people saying, you should wear a suit and tie. Look, um, it's not like we're not on here talking about what's the best potato salad recipe, what preferred drink do you have at a picnic, uh, how do you make a great margarita. Unfortunately, we're talking about some pretty grim, dangerous things,
Exactly.
or things that are bad for the world. So, if we can, with maybe through the shirts, have a little bit of lightness, it's our silver lining in that otherwise dark cloud. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
We
not
are
not
making some sort of balance.
yeah, we're not trying to not trying to trivialize it. But and those who do wear suits and ties, hey, great. They look fine in them. When I left Washington D.C., the suit and tie only comes out on really special occasions, maybe a wedding, a funeral if necessary, or uh, going to a dinner or a meeting with Sergei Lavrov. Yeah,
The
I'll wear
same
a
here in Brazil, Larry, by the
yeah,
way. The
yeah.
same here. Uh, Yeah, it doesn't happen. Here in Brazil, it's the same way. Let's get started, Larry, with the SCO Summit. You wrote a piece on your website, The Dawning of a New World Order.
Right.
What has happened and how did you find the SCO Summit?
Well, I haven't seen all. It finished up overnight while I was in bed, so I didn't have somebody sitting there dictating to me. Actually, the the funniest thing was that the photograph I showed of the meeting of Modi with Putin and Xi. There was a period where they were laughing, and so all these memes are starting to pop up on the internet of them laughing. Like, for example, one of them goes, Putin to Modi, man, can you believe that Macron is married to a dude? Or Putin tells Modi, yeah, my grandfather died in his sleep on a bus. And Modi goes, oh, I'm so sorry. He says, yeah, uh, he died peacefully. Too bad for the other passengers. you know, but it shows up, so these were not laughs from trying to be polite. These were genuine belly laughs. So I don't know what they were talking about. But when you see those three, particularly India and China, laughing together,
Mm,
that's good news, because previously they were like getting ready to launch nuclear weapons at each other. And the tensions that have existed between those two countries for several years, which the United States was gleefully trying to exploit. And now the United States finds itself on the outside looking in, because this SCO originally was sort of it was a meeting of China and the former Soviet republics. Principally, they were the main body of it. But now others are getting invited in. The one I thought was fascinating that showed up, or the three, were Turkey, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. And while Azerbaijan is at the SCO, Russia just blew up one of their ships that was hauling weapons into Ukraine. So, maybe Aliyev will have something to talk to Putin about, or Putin will remind him. He just say, FAFO. I'd like to figure out what FAFO is in Russian. We need to. I'll have to go on to Google Translate, start using that as the acronym. That'll be what Putin shared with Aliyev. But the start of it, I did get the initial sort of remarks from Xi, and he said, "Hey, we're not going to put up with this bullying anymore. We're going to chart a new security order." So this is the work of SCO is really going to complement BRICS. And the irony, it's not so much irony, but Modi shows up at this as the new, sort of acting president of BRICS for the next year. Just as, last year around this time, they were in Kazan for the BRICS summit. And that's when the mantle fell upon Brazil, and we were worried, oh boy, Brazil's going to drop the ball on this, and they almost did. But now Modi enters it with, both critical support from the other BRICS nations and the all of the SCO nations, because they're in a confrontation and showdown with the United States. And these idiot advisors around Trump, particularly Peter Navarro, too bad they didn't keep him in jail. They're convinced that they're going to tell India what to do, because this is all about hurting Russia. And these countries, they've had enough. And so they're coming together at a time that the United States, its foreign policy under Trump is, how many people can we piss off today? Who can we alienate? It's crazy.
What's amazing, Larry, 2 days ago, I talked with you and before about this article in the Politico. There was an article arguing that the next 5 years, the escalation that could happen, one of them was between China and India.
Oh, yeah, I know.
It's unbelievable.
Listen, within the foreign policy establishment here in the United States, and I'm saying this for most of your foreign viewers, that they'll appreciate and understand what's going on here. There are sort of two myths that continue to dominate. If you're attending any of these academic forums or these policy presentations, you're going to run into this. Myth number one: Russia is just it's the stepchild to China. It's just there for convenience sake right now, but it really doesn't like the Chinese, and the Chinese are going to dominate it anyway. Russia's so small and so insignificant. So, we got to make Russia our friend so they can work with us so we can defeat China. Elbridge Colby, the deputy number 2 guy at the Department of Defense, has written about it extensively. Aaron West Mitchell did a paper we talked about before that was in the national interest along those lines. Rand Corporation in 2019 spelled it out, of how to split Russia from China. And what the combination of Joe Biden and Donald Trump have accomplished is they've brought China and Russia together in a relationship that is historic because at no time in the long history of both countries. So with Russia, you go back 1,000 years, and with the Chinese, I'm not sure I got enough fingers on my hands to count how far back, but they now are integrated, and both economically, politically, financially, and militarily they are sharing. So this is a broad-based cooperation. And now in Russian schools, for example, kids, it's expected that they learn to speak Chinese. So that's, it's not an esoteric course for only a few people. It's one everyone's expected. Hey, you're going to learn another language, you're going to learn Chinese. So that's the first myth. The second myth is that there's no way India and China can get along. And what do? Through the Central Intelligence Agency and other intelligence organizations, do everything we in our power to try to exacerbate or set that confrontation afire. Anything we can do to provoke the separation of those two, the better. We don't want them working together. God, they might do something beneficial for the world. We can't have that. So, but these are concepts that people sit around and talk about it, in these open forum and on the cable news shows that, like, yeah, in fact, when I go on to say what, I won't be allowed on, but if I was allowed to go on and say what I'm saying, man, they'd treat me like I had leprosy.
It wasn't just about China and India, Larry. They had the same sort of argument about Russia and China as well, about Iran and Russia being the they don't like each other. They are, after all, they are some sort of enemies historically, but it shows that you look at the picture right now, you see how the world is changing before our eyes. China and Russia, it's something. I think for the establishment in the United States, still they don't believe what's
Yeah, no,
going on between the two.
they're saying, no, I'm not seeing that. That's got to be artificial intelligence. Um, but it's not just that they're meeting and they're talking; they're also doing. So when China purchases Russian oil 10 years ago, when that happened, and it wasn't in the quantities that it is now. If China wanted to buy Russian oil, they'd have to take the Chinese RMB and they would go to the international financial market and buy dollars. And then they'd pay those dollars. The dollars would get transferred to Russia via SWIFT, and it would get deposited in a Russian account. That's not happening today. They're not buying those dollars. And so the demand for the dollar is going down. Now, it's not so dramatic that it's dropped 20 or 30%, but you know what? It is like how floodwaters take down a wall. If they're running outside that wall, first comes off one piece of concrete, then another piece of concrete, then another. So pieces start coming off, and it doesn't appear serious until all of a sudden it does reach a point where the structural integrity of that wall has been breached, and boom, it falls over. That's where the U.S. dollar-dominated financial system is headed, because Russia and China are going outside that. China and Brazil are going outside that. India with Russia is going outside that. India with other BRICS countries is going to go outside that. So all of a sudden, these countries, so China, Russia, and India are major countries, and as is Brazil. South Africa is not in the same league with them in terms of an economy. But now that they're all starting to use currencies other than the dollar for settling international trade, it is a threat to the U.S. dominance of this financial system. Now, they've insisted publicly that, no, we're not out trying to replace the dollar, no. But, it's not like they're going to set up a new currency, which will just be, a BRICS currency. But they are saying, we're not going to any longer be in the position where you, the United States, can bully us, threaten us, sanction us, hurt us, and use your dollar as a club to beat us. No, that's going to stop. And the U.S. actions in the wake of the start of the special military operation in February 2022, that's where this initial fuse was lit. And I wrote about it back then. And all of a sudden, the fire has spread. It's growing. And it's going to come a point. I don't know, is it going to be next year? Is it going to be in 5 years? Where the U.S. will no longer be sitting atop the heap controlling this. And at that point, we're going to have to change how we act and how we interact with other countries. Do we treat them with respect and as equals, or do we continue our new form of neo-colonialism and try to rule over them?
I think the main point would be what is bringing all these countries together. The only point is their economy is bringing them. Their economy is totally important for their security, for their growth, for the future of the country, and it doesn't seem that is that fact is appreciated in Washington,
Oh no,
because you cannot imagine China without the energy coming from Russia and Iran. You cannot imagine Russia without the help of BRICS, because we know how BRICS was important in the fight in Ukraine, because they wanted to put the pressure the way that to crush Russia, to just destroy Russia. But the BRICS didn't get along with that plan. India
right,
said no to the Biden administration, not to Trump administration.
right, right. Yeah, it is. Um, we're at a transition phase in the world where the countries that have been exploited by the colonial empires, by Europe and by the United States. I put the United States in that same colonial empire. We like to pretend that we're the world's best friend and we're sitting on a hill celebrating democracy when we're one of the biggest damn invaders in history. And the death tolls we've racked up of other people is significant. But you look also in Africa across the Sahel. These countries that used to be exploited by France in particular are kicking them out and taking control of their own natural resources. You know, one of the things that has been the hallmark of the West is to go into a country. Oh, we'll invest here with you. Just let's say, hey, we'll help you with that gold mine. But then, hey, we're going to sign it over to us. And all of a sudden, those countries, you don't see the development of infrastructure. You don't see the development of the people in terms of having a solid middle class, people with a consumer society where they can live and with a decent infrastructure, good roads, good sewer and water systems, so the population's healthy, good electricity. The colonial empires did not promote that. And they always dealt with these Africans in particular. These black people, they're stupid. They don't know, they're animals. Well, they've had enough. And now they're recognizing, we're going to take control of these resources and use them for our people. Now, are there some leaders that are corrupt and going to take advantage for themselves? Yeah, absolutely. That exists here in the United States. So, we're in no position to go around pointing at others and lecturing them. Hey, you need to clean your act up and be like us. Oh, you mean like, all the presidents that have gone into office not as multimillionaires, and when they leave office, they're multimillionaires? Yeah, great system. Bill Clinton is, the poster boy for that, as is Barack Obama. Two of the worst examples. So, we got the corruption on this side of the aisle, but we're always out lecturing other countries. So they're now starting to break away from that. I would not be surprised to see an alternative setup to the United Nations, or that there's going to be a confrontation with respect to the United Nations. There's no reason in the world that France and England should sit in the two of the most important seats on the UN Security Council where they can veto anything. France and England, or the United Kingdom, are irrelevant countries. Yeah, they've got through the financial system, the Rothschild banking influences, the European money there. Yeah, they've got some influence, but militarily, economically, they're a joke. They're an absolute joke. They don't produce anything of great note. France produces great wines and champagne. Ooh, some good cheeses. But in terms of natural resources or modern technology that's changing the world, no. That's all happening in China. And in the West, this myth continues to perpetuate. Oh, the Chinese just had that because they stole it from us. The Chinese are doing things on an industrial scale the United States can't match at all. And it's like, stop with this arrogance where we've got to assume, well, we're Americans, we're the best of all. I have been proud to be an American because there was a point where I thought we were really sincere about trying to help the oppressed, trying to stand up for freedom and liberty. Now, as I've gotten older, I've realized it's all been a damn scam. Or they've used that meme and both bamboozled a bunch of very good-hearted people into believing it, when the folks that really are at the heart of the deep state and the key in these financial institutions, they don't believe that at all. We're just something that can be used.
Larry, do you feel that China, what was the main goal of China? What was the main objective of China in communicating? Because they invited Armenia. Somehow it was amazing to me to see Armenia, Azerbaijan there. Do you think that they're having some sort of honest discussions,
Yes.
sincere discussions about the region?
Oh, yes. I think they were informed, probably in no uncertain terms, that look, here's the reality. Our economy is growing. The U.S. economy is not. The U.S. is aligned with Europe. Europe is in decline. This is the future here. You're a small, and particularly to Armenia and to Azerbaijan, you are very small countries. Not that you're insignificant, but that if you decide that you're going to align with the West and align yourself with countries that want to attack and bully us, then, that's your choice. But understand that such choices come with consequences. So I don't think they were there to threaten them. They weren't going to turn around and do a sort of what I call, take off, pretend like they're dressed up as Chinese, but they're really acting like the United States. Take the mask off. Hi, it's Uncle Sam, and this is what you're going to do. No. I think they try to, convey, we'll deal with you respectfully on an equal basis, even though you're a very tiny, tiny country, Armenia in particular, with 2.8, 3 million people tops. Hell, that's a neighborhood in Beijing. Okay. So it was maybe to sort of show them, let us show you what the real opportunities are for economic cooperation. Because with China's Belt and Road Initiative, they're putting money where their mouth is. And they're actually out helping other countries build up infrastructure. Yeah, well, the Chinese, you get to use that infrastructure and help China, absolutely. And do the Chinese, are they, I love it over this, on this side of the side. Well, they're ruthless in getting control of supply chains. No, they're smart. They're not idiots like we have been, okay? But in doing so, they're not acting like that monopoly boss where, we got you by the balls and you do what we want and we're going to squeeze,
I think China should be thankful of Trump and his administration, because they've done something to India that nobody could have ever imagined that would be possible to achieve.
Well, one of the accounts that's circulating, I don't know if it's true, but that one of the reasons Trump is so energized against India is that when in one of his conversations with India, he asked that India nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize because of his role in bringing the Pakistan-India war to a conclusion. And Modi said, "You didn't have anything to do with that." No, I'm not going to do that. uh, uh, there's, I hope that's true, but even if it's not, it's sort of a, one of those
If
stories.
that's true, that's a tragedy. The Donald Trump sacrificing everything.
Yeah. Trump's obsession with getting a Nobel Peace Prize when hey, I want the Nobel Peace Prize. We're going to rename the Pentagon the Department of War. Yeah, I think, yeah, you're certainly showing that you merit a Peace Prize, buddy.
Larry, here is the nature or the atmosphere of the talks between Vladimir Putin and Modi at the summit.
We have developed cooperation at various levels. Trade and economic cooperation overall shows positive momentum. Tourist exchanges are developing. We closely coordinate our efforts on the international stage.
Mr. President, this demonstrates just how profound and comprehensive our specially privileged strategic partnership truly is. Even under the most challenging circumstances, India and Russia have always moved forward shoulder to shoulder. Our close cooperation matters not only for the peoples of our two nations, but also for ensuring global peace, stability, and prosperity.
I don't see anything possible in terms of separating the two countries. Doesn't matter how much pressure you put on India or on Russia. They know that the future, they know that their future is together, is not separated.
Well, and look, they've had close relationships. This is nothing new, okay? Because this goes back, 70 years. So when 70 plus, so when India secured its freedom from British rule, that was in the last days of Stalin, and then Khrushchev comes in. But the Soviets at the time made a point of developing close relationships with India and supplying India with weapons. I think I've recounted before how when my wife was in her first year in college, she went on a trip with a group of students from her college to India, and she stayed with the family of Bandura Shastri. Bandura Shastri had been he was the Indian prime minister, and he'd been in on a trip to Moscow the previous year. So this was like January. So I guess it was like January of 72 when he died of a heart attack in Moscow. So it was just a reminder that these two countries were not unfamiliar with each other. But what's taking place now is a deepening of that relationship, that it's not just commercial. There's a cultural element involved as well. And again, what you get with the Russians that you don't get with the United States is you get Aretha Franklin, respect, RESPECT. They, and countries respond well to that. Did you notice in the picture when Modi and Putin were walking, they're holding hands. So, hand holding's not a thing in Brazil or the United States for me. You see guys walking around holding hands. You say, "Oh, where's the gay pride parade?" Okay, that's how we react in the West. But in countries in the Middle East and in Asia, it is not uncommon, and it's a sign of friendship. And you didn't see Putin go, "Oh, don't touch me." They're holding hands, which is an act, it shows friendship and trust. And the way they interacted in their conversations with each other, you saw Modi, there's towards the end of that conversation, he invited Putin Hey, come to India. And Putin said, okay, I'm coming. October, I think probably October. So this is, what we're witnessing here now is India, China, Russia in the lead, standing up saying, you know what, we're not going to be shackled, controlled, or bullied anymore by the West, particularly the United States. We would prefer to have cordial, friendly relationships with the United States. We would like to do business with the United States, but they ain't the only customer in the market. There are hundreds, more than 100 other countries that, yeah, they may be small and they may have limited financial resources, but you can build a bigger community than being dependent upon this one out of control monster, which is what the United States has been.
I think many of us, when we think of the two countries, we still thinking of the oil or the energy going from Russia to India. But we know that there was a contract between the two countries in terms of their military cooperations, that Russia is providing a lot of weapons to India. That's so much important. I think the structure of the Indian army is based on the Russian technology in terms of the military and weapons and equipment. Yeah, is that the case?
No, I'm not sure about that. The one thing, India, yeah, I mean, they've been buying and getting Russian weaponry for 60 years, 60 plus years. But now what they're getting is weapon systems that are combat tested. You know, that's one of the things, if you will, the side benefits that Russia's reaping out of this special military operation is it doesn't have to do simulations. It doesn't have to do field tests that are not, where they try to pretend that they're in combat. They're actually operating where people are shooting back, and so they get to see how does it work in the real world, and activity on the ground. So that gives Russia right there a leg up even over Chinese military equipment. Chinese can produce a lot of stuff quickly and fast, but it's never actually been tested in combat. It wouldn't surprise me that China might follow North Korea in offering to deploy certain weapon systems or to be able to test them against actual Ukrainian positions.
Or maybe Iran.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Yeah, sure. Iran's getting equipment and technical support from both Russia and China. So, this is the way the narrative is being presented in the West is that all these countries are evil, they're bad, and that we, the good Americans, we got to stand up and fight them. And I got to tell you, I'm goddamn tired of fighting. We can't continue to do this. Now, and as I've said previously with you, the reason we do it is we've never really paid a significant price in the loss of human life. We make other people die. We don't have that many in terms of the overall numbers. So yeah, it's like no cost. We get to do this, and except we've now indebted ourselves in a way that is just it's beyond the average person's comprehension. They can't count that high. We've gone from under Ronald Reagan, so 44 years ago, the U.S. deficit was $1 trillion. A lot of money. Now 37 trillion and growing. Next year it may be 30. It's growing. The pace at which it's increasing is accelerating, not decelerating. And there comes a point where it's no longer economically sustainable. You can talk about that with Paul Craig Roberts later when he comes on.
Yeah, exactly. Larry, how does the mainstream media in the West, how do they picture what's going on in the East? How do they feel about that? How do they want to make people understand what's going on? Are they interested in letting people know what's going on in that part of the world?
What do you mean, what's going on in the East? We don't have anything about that here in our papers. You don't see the CNN or MSNBC or Fox News lead all, hey, man, there's been this major meeting with the SCO. They ignore it. Hey, maybe if we ignore it, it'll go away. It doesn't exist. Yeah, the ignorance in this part of the world is, gargantuan. They ignore it. Don't talk about it. Or when you do talk about it, you talk about it in a way that's deceptive. I was listening. It's a little off topic, but I guess Ray McGovern went to some meeting in North Carolina, and maybe this was from earlier today. And he asked a question. I don't know if this was a member of Congress or, but it was a political figure in North Carolina. I couldn't tell because all I could see is the back of this character's head. And this guy goes off on about how China and Russia are interfering in our elections. They're on social media. But 30% of what's on social media is from Russia and China. And I'm thinking, yeah, the other 70% is from us. And this, again, the blindness to accuse Russia and China of great meddling in U.S. politics, while ignoring the documented record of the United States, now going back almost 80 years, it was starting with the CIA, of meddling in country after country to influence their internal politics, to message, to pay people to go out and protest, to create color revolutions. We're the ones who are doing that more than China and Russia combined. And yet we don't see it. All we can see is, these other countries are a threat. So, no, nobody's paying attention. They don't realize how significant what's taking place at the SCO. And then that's being followed up. So tomorrow you get the, let's see, right now it's like 11 p.m. in Beijing. So they're closing out Monday night in Beijing. And in another 12 hours, they're going to be having a massive military parade to celebrate the end of World War II, the Chinese victory, along with the Russian victory over the Empire of Japan. And then that's going to be followed by the Vladivostok International Economic Forum. And Putin's going there, and a lot of these leaders and their ministers and representatives are going to be attending that. So this is, and why is that important? When you get these kinds of meetings and people get to meet each other face to face and talk to one another face to face, you start building relationships that it's not just transactional. It's not just about money. It becomes about, hey, I know them, I know his wife, or I know her husband, I know their kids, I know what, you personalize it. I mean, I've experienced that, firsthand. What I didn't know in 2022, I didn't know Alistair Crook. I didn't know Pepe Escobar. Hell, I didn't know you. But when you come together, particular meeting Alistair and Pepe in person, and all of a sudden they become new friends, and very, very, very with a deep relationship of trust, because you develop a respect and an understanding for who they are and what they are. You can call them to question their judgment that they like me, but that's a whole nother issue. But it's important when this is how you start building these networks that can help change the world. So as these people come together in these settings, they also get to see, how do the Russians treat us? And Russians treat foreigners very well. Again, this concept of respect that does the Russians don't come equipped with this air of superiority of like, we're the Russians, we look down on you. No, they've because of the experience of what Russia's gone through over the last 100 years. They've learned some lessons from that.
I think, Larry, this summit was on the part of India and Pakistan was also important because they had some sort of fight. They fought each other, and right now they're getting together. It's amazing the way that all these countries with all these differences coming together to the summit.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see that happening in the Western Hemisphere. You don't see that happening in the United States together with Europeans. Anybody who has some sort of disagreement with the United States doesn't fit to be part of the meeting.
Yeah.
You don't see that happening with the SCO summit, with the BRICS. This is huge. This is a new achievement in the sort of communication they have.
Well, remember, I pointed out that with respect to that terrorist attack in Kashmir, launched from Pakistan, killed tourists, many of them Indians, citizens of India. I don't know for a fact, but if I had to wager money, I'd wager money that the CIA or MI6, foreign intelligence organizations, were involved in helping facilitate that at some point. And for what reason? Because they want to get India and Pakistan fighting. They want to weaken India ultimately. And this attitude of promoting conflict, there's money to be made there. That's where the money comes. The power of these defense lobbies or these U.S. corporations that are getting money from to build weapons systems. It's over $1 trillion now. There's no incentive. If we go out and have peace with India, China, and Russia, how do we justify spending all this money? We don't need it anymore. Whoa, wait a second. We don't want that. I mean, that's how perverse it's become. That instead of actually acting in what's the best interest, not just of the United States, but of the people of the world, we have created a machine that is dedicated to destruction. And so I don't see how you break the cycle. And the only way that cycle breaks is until the system collapses or is changed. And, I'm not naive enough to believe that, it can be changed peacefully. No, it's going to be changed violently. And, the people of the United States will suffer they'll pay a terrible price at some point down the road, I think. And I'm certainly not looking forward to that. But, I don't see how it ends any other way. Sure hope I'm wrong. Prove me wrong. Find a peaceful way out.
I think that would help in a long-term strategy. That would help the United States as well, Larry. If you convince somehow the United States that any sort of war would lead to a defeat for you, and you're not going to go after that war. It doesn't matter how much profit you're going to get out of that war. If that's somehow influence, that there's some sort of consequences of that war that you cannot sustain, you're not going to go to that war. I think what they're doing is somehow helping not only themselves, they're helping the United States, they're helping the whole world.
Yeah, it is. The United States, I'll use the Mike Tyson as sort of a metaphor for what the United States has become. When Mike Tyson is at the start of his heavyweight career and a champion boxer, knocking everybody out. Yeah, he was strong. He was formidable. He was, the man didn't lose. He recently, he's now over the 60 years of age, which, I don't care how good a shape you are at 60, you're not what you were when you're 30. You'll find or 40. You'll find this out. And they had this promotional fight with this young influencer who's like 30. Tyson got beat. The United States is a lot like that. We think we're still that 20-year-old. We're strong, we're healthy, and we're not. And now we're coming up with these, let's call them these younger countries that are starting to emerge from really a legacy of colonial exploitation. And China was humiliated for a century by the British. I mean, it's incredible. You think, how could a small country like the United Kingdom take and control a country the size of China? Well, one of the ways you do it is make sure the people are illiterate, make sure they're uneducated, keep them poor. Same with India. The history of India was prior, the number of famines where people died of starvation when it increased dramatically when the British controlled it as a colony. It was something that previously in India they had not experienced on the same frequency or scale. Well, are those things coincidence? No, it's how the system operates. And it's ultimately about us wanting to be in control, where we can tell others what to do. Or allow others like Israel to murder civilians and do nothing to stop it. So
the same case goes to Iran as well, Larry. British government occupied Iran in terms of the oil.
Mm-hmm.
And Iran has never been colonized by other countries, but they control the oil of Iran, and that's some sort of
yeah. No, that Mossadegh, what we're experiencing with Iran today, that fuse was lit when Kermit Roosevelt, the CIA chief of station, working with the Brits, engineered the coup that ousted Mossadegh, installed the Shah, and that created the conditions that led to the rise of the Ayatollah Khamenei and the Islamic Revolution, where the Shia throughout the region finally had a spiritual leader in charge. Then the West did everything in its power to demonize and portray, we get upset. See, the Iranians say, hey, they're chanting death to America. Well, look at what the hell America did to them. If Iran did to us what we did to them, we'd be chanting death to Iran. And guess what? We're chanting death to Iran. We just clean it up and do it in a more polite forum. I mean, God, I hate hypocrisy. It is, that's my number one pet peeve. The hypocrisy of the West on issue after issue.
Larry, there was a meeting, and I think it was yesterday. During the meeting, it was Russian Chief of General Staff, Valery Gerasimov. Gerasimov, yeah. Here is what he had behind him, the picture. You see, the picture that you see behind him, here is the bigger picture, the map of Ukraine.
Uh-huh.
In that picture, Odessa and Nikolaev are part of Russia.
Yeah.
Novorossiya.
And Kharkiv. Don't forget Kharkiv.
Yeah. Go up. Odessa, Nikolaev, Dnipropetrovsk, and go into Kharkov. Yeah. And it seems that Russia has decided about what would be the future map of Ukraine. They know what do they want. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they talk about it with Donald Trump in their recent meeting, but how do you feel what's going on the battlefield and the way that Russia sees the conflict?
There was an article making the rounds yesterday, posted on Zero Hedge. and it was saying, gee, Russia could have won this war much quicker, but it looks like they're more interested in seeing how many Ukrainians they can kill. I'm going, yeah, you're just figuring that out? At the outset, Vladimir Putin said they had two goals: demilitarize Ukraine, denazify Ukraine. Well, how do you demilitarize a country? You destroy its army. And one of the ways you destroy its army is create situations where they will come in and attack and you can kill them. And that's what's going on. And that is what is going to continue until the point comes that Ukraine is going to sign a document of surrender. This is, let's call this reverse Stalingrad. In the same way that the Soviets fought the Germans and then surrounded them, starved them, wouldn't let them get resupplied, so they ended up starving and running short of ammunition. They had to surrender. They could not continue to fight. Well, that's where this is going. When I spoke a couple of months ago, 3 months ago, I guess now, with General Brzezinski, our first conversation, and I asked him straight up. I said, from just a tactical standpoint, why isn't the Russian general staff blowing up every bridge over the Dnieper River? Because you blow those up, all of a sudden the primary way that the Ukrainian army is getting resupplied is with trains carrying material and personnel to the front lines. And he laughed initially and said, I was wondering that myself. But then as we got talking about it, he said, if they had done that early on in the war, that would have left the Ukrainian army intact, largely intact. They would have been mostly on the west side of the river, not the east side. And then that meant that the threat that Russia faced was still there and would probably grow as NATO would continue to flood in advisors and equipment and ammunition. So what Russia's doing is that they've left those bridges open. And Ukraine has continued to flood personnel into the combat zone. And Russia is killing them at a lopsided rate. We saw in the last exchange of bodies, 19 dead Russians for 1,000 dead Ukrainians. That's a 50-to-1 ratio. But then people say, "Oh yeah, but what you're missing out is the Russians are advancing, so the Ukrainians can't recover all of their bodies of the dead Russians." It's like, you hear what you just said? On the one hand, you and the West are saying the Russians are losing, the Russians aren't making any progress, but then your excuse for why there are so few dead Russians to turn over is because the Russians are advancing so quickly. I mean, pick a damn narrative and stick with it. Don't, take both sides of the issue like you're schizophrenic. So the fact of the matter is Russia is destroying and attriting the Ukrainians, and that's going to continue. Putin and Lavrov have both said, about 2 months ago, that look, the current deal on the table is this: recognize the 5 oblasts that have now voted to become part of Russia. Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Crimea. Accept those as Russian territory. Pull your forces out. Stay out of NATO. And then we'll sit down and talk and figure out how to come up with a peace agreement that is going to protect the rights of Russian speakers and going to protect the Orthodox Church. Those are like 2 key issues now for Russia. Well, Ukraine's rejected that. The West has rejected that. And Putin and Lavrov said, okay, the next deal will be wherever Russian troops are, we're going to keep that too. That's why Russia right now is making steady progress into Dnipropetrovsk. They're also moving into Kharkiv. They're moving into Sumy. And then if they decide to go to Poltava, there's four more republics that will rejoin Russia. That I think that's where this is headed, and as well as Odessa in the south.
I think Russia is thinking of this region from Odessa, Nikolaev going up to Kharkov. They're thinking of as the eastern part of Ukraine and Donbass region before you remember in Minsk 2 2015 they asked for some sort of autonomy for the region. It seems that, do you think that would be the case for the buffer zone that we're talking about, or Russia wants to capture all of that? And I'm talking about Odessa, Nikolaev going to Kharkov being some sort of they seek some sort of autonomy in the future settlement.
Yeah, well, Russia will allow Russia's not going to take Dnipropetrovsk by force and then tell people this is ours and screw you if you don't like it. They will get control of it, restore order, and then let the people vote. Hey, do you want to continue to hang with Ukraine? Okay. Do you want to become part of us? Okay. Do you want to be independent? Okay. I think the Russians are sincere about giving them that kind of choice. But, those, I don't think the people in those republics are crazy, and they'll recognize that they're not going to get the kind of aid and support from the West that they will get from Russia. And, one story that's not being covered too much is how Russia has moved in to rebuild, these cities that get leveled and, they look awful. They're getting rebuilt, and they're getting modernized and upgraded in the process. The Russians are smart in that regard, and the West is just continues to be desperate in shutting us down. Portraying Russia as they're at the end of the rope. Someone new has joined.
Hello,
Paul
Larry.
is here. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to start coming on an hour early so I can hear Larry too.
Yeah.
Now, but the requirement is we got to get you a new shirt.
Yeah.
Why?
Got to get
You
you.
don't like my office
Oh no, it's
t-shirt?
look. It is it's a nice shirt, but what we're talking about is getting you one of the Hawaiian shirts or a Tommy Bahama shirt,
Oh, I've
tropical.
I've got a Hawaiian shirt.
There you go.
I got up. I was leaving to go to the gym to work out, and I remembered. I said, "Damn, Nima's done it again," and moved me up from 2:30 to 11. I came very close to walking out, Nima, and having you with nobody on the show because we need to get a fixed time.
Yeah. But yeah, we're going to keep it at 11 a.m. Eastern.
Okay. Well, it messes up my gym day, but all right.
Paul, I was wondering, what was your take on what has happened during the SCO summit? Seeing Russia, China, and India together, how much of what has happened was the outcome of what Donald Trump did to India?
Well, I'm not qualified to give an answer. I'm not even paying that much attention to it because Nima and Larry, I just assume that the rising part of the world, Russia and China and India, they're just going to go on about their business, and the West is going to continue declining. And I think they've all decided they don't really need us, and we're just a problem. And so I assume that the sort of speculation you hear that Russia and China and the rest of them are establishing a new world order is correct. I think that's what's happened. It seems to me it's because of the American neoconservatives that the United States is missed out totally, and Europe, from participating in this developing new world order. We are simply have excluded ourselves. So we're cut out of the profit opportunities, the markets, of being included in diplomacy that makes world-changing decisions. We've been excluded by a handful, a tiny handful of Zionist neoconservatives who hijacked American foreign policy when the Soviet Union collapsed and essentially are isolating us from the world. So I think that's basically what's the situation. I don't see any way to turn it around. And it's just going to be a rise of a different part of the world and a decline of the West, which was in the forefront for centuries. That's just my view.
Well, hey, Paul, I got to actually let me ask you a question, because what I'm seeing take place now, and I'd like you to comment on, is this as significant as I think it is? That 10 years ago, when China would buy oil from Russia, the Chinese would have to go onto the international markets. They'd purchase dollars. Those dollars would be transferred to Russian accounts, and the Russians would take the dollars, maybe convert it to rubles or buy something else. All of this, now what we're seeing with BRICS is they're cutting the U.S. dollar out of those transactions. So does that translate into a global reduction in demand for the U.S. dollar, and does that contribute to the fall of the dollar in terms of its value?
Oh, certainly, of course, yes. You see, the power of the United States since the end of the Second World War has depended mainly on the fact the dollar is the world reserve currency. When your currency is the world reserve currency, it means that your debt, your national debt, is the reserves of the world's central banks. So this was why there was never any problem with the American debt, despite all of the warnings. I mean, David Stockman's been going on about this for a half century. The American debt was never a problem to finance it, because as the American debt went up, it simply meant the reserves of the world banking system went up. They were all happy. They had more reserves. They could lend more, extend more credit. So when you lose that role, how do you finance your debt? If the world doesn't want to hold your debt in dollars as its reserves, how do you finance it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem that the United States has brought on itself by weaponizing the dollar, by sanctions. This was mindless. It's mindless. It makes you wonder if there's any intelligence in the United States government or in the economics profession. You would have expected all the economists to say, hey, don't do this. You're going to undermine your whole power base, and how are you going to finance your debt? So that's the real serious part. The only way our debt could ever be a problem, as long as we're the world reserve currency, would be the interest on it. The debt could grow so large because it's the reserves of the world banking system.
Right.
I mean, China had $1 trillion in American treasury bonds. That was the bank reserves. Well, you can imagine all these countries, huge amounts, because it was the currency of international transactions, and not just for paying oil prices, but for settling all balance of trade differences. Well, it could have grown so large that there'd be a problem of paying the interest. It could end up being larger than the entire budget. On the other hand, I've never thought much about this, Larry, Nima, but it may have been possible for the Federal Reserve just to print the money and pay the interest. It wouldn't have done anything except further expand the bank reserves. Now, possibly an eventual downside would be the World Bank reserves would be so huge, and all the world banks would be able to create so much money and credit that there'd be some massive world inflation. That's possible. I've just never thought about it that much, but I have pointed out for many, many years that the weaponization of the dollar was destroying its role on which our ability to finance our debt depended.
Mm-hmm.
Larry, you ask a very important question in my opinion, because Donald Trump was talking about it before being elected, but the policies that he's taking right now is totally the opposite way.
Yeah.
What is that? We had Lotnick talking about the more than 97% of the revenue that Lockheed Martin receives, it comes from the government.
Yeah.
How is that influencing the decisions in Washington?
Well, and I think I'd be curious what Paul thinks about this as well. What I have seen, I'm part of a weekly Zoom call with, if I rattled off the names of the people on there, anybody that's in the financial world would know some of these people are seen as leaders or major commentators on financial channels. The combination of arrogance and blindness is stunning. They have got themselves convinced that we're so great, we're so powerful. These other pissant countries, they can't live without us. This is just nonsense. And I keep saying, the bus is rolling downhill and it's going to hit us and we're going to get run over. And then you're going to say, where'd that damn bus come from? So, the United States is so busy looking in the mirror, they're saying, mirror, mirror on the wall, I'm the fairest of them all, aren't I? And we don't like to hear what the mirror has to say back.
Paul, go ahead. What's your take on that?
Oh, I agree with Larry. He nailed it.
And
my
question, go ahead, Paul.
We increasingly live in unreality.
Yeah.
The United States is all of it, every aspect, not just the government and the foreign policy people, but every aspect, the medical associations, the universities, every professional society, the ordinary people, entertainment, sport, they're so far removed from reality that they can't connect to it. And so they're not going to see the bus that Larry talked about. That's real. It's outside. It's outside their arena.
Yeah. So, hey, Nima, I'm going to have to jump, but appreciate the chance to chat with Paul, and you guys have a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. Yeah. Let me just
get out here.
Yeah.
You should have us both on at the same time sometime, Nima.
Yeah, exactly. And Paul, my question that Larry somehow tried to respond is that how is these companies like Lockheed Martin and these companies that are producing weapons it seems that they have a lot of leverage on the Trump administration. That's why they couldn't change the policy toward Russia so far. How do you see that?
Well, Eisenhower told us about that in 1961. He said, look, usually after a war, you demobilize, and the military security complex goes back to producing consumer goods. But the Soviet threat has left us with the military security complex, and it's growing stronger and stronger. And he warned us that we could lose the democracy to the power of this. Well, 1961, that's 40, 50, 60, 5 years ago or something like that. It was a long time ago. Yeah, it was 60, 64 years ago. So nothing was ever done about it. And the military security complex, they have in almost every 50 state, either a military base or an armaments manufacturer. So they have a presence, a strong economic presence in all the states. So the governors are with them. All the representatives and senators from those states are with them. They have campaign contributions they dole out. You can't go against them. It's like the Israel lobby. You can't go against the Israel lobby and stay in office, and you can't go against the military security complex and stay in office. So that's when you tell them you're going to make peace, particularly if it's their main enemy, they're not going to let you, because if you take away the enemy, then there goes their market, there goes all their profits, their importance, the cost overruns. There goes the unaccountability of the security agencies. If there's no Russian threat or China threat or Iranian threat or terrorist threat, then their covert operations, assassinations, regime change, it gets more attention. And so they simply won't stand for it. This I've pointed out over and over, I think, and we probably talked about it, that this is what Trump's up against. He's up against telling the military security complex is going to take away their enemies. Well, that's what got him in trouble his first term. That's what produced Russiagate. He said he was going to normalize relations with Russia, and they said, that's what you think. And clearly he was not allowed. He was forced off of it. And then to teach him a lesson for the next 8 years, they tried to prosecute him for offenses shared with Putin and trying to steal the elections. And he had 4 criminal prosecutions, a whole variety of civil prosecutions. So this is the military security complex teaching the president that he doesn't call those kinds of shots. He's not allowed to take away their enemies. We still see their talks about investigating and prosecuting Merrick Garland and Comey and John Brennan and the others that were involved in the orchestration of Russiagate. And of course, they should include all the editors and journalists of the whore media, because they were part of that too. And this was all a fake thing to destroy a man who was a threat to the military security complex because he wanted to normalize relations with Russia. That meant no more Russian enemies, a huge dent to the profits of the military security complex. So that's the situation. He's still in that situation.
Paul, I have you.
Okay, you're back again.
Yeah.
So he's still in that situation, Nima, which is why I think that he's trying to make a deal about the Ukrainian situation where we get out of it without causing a loss in business for the American military security complex. So this is what all the negotiation was about, to have Europe continue the war by purchasing our weapons. So instead of the American taxpayer paying the military security complex and the United States still being involved in the conflict, giving targeting information and intelligence, we would withdraw, and Europe would have the responsibility for continuing the war, and they would be able to do that by using their money to purchase our weapons, so the military security complex wouldn't lose and therefore wouldn't turn against Trump and give him another Russiagate or whatever or an assassination or whatever they would be inclined to do. So I think that's the reason for him getting out. And of course, it also fits the view that the United States has decided to sequence its wars and not be in a situation where it's fighting Russia and Iran and China at the same time. We still don't know whether Netanyahu is going to have Trump destroy yet another Muslim Middle Eastern country for Israel. And we don't know what kind of nonsense the neoconservatives may be up to in causing trouble with China.
Who's Europe, Paul? You're talking about just United Kingdom together with France and Germany, or you're talking about the whole European countries?
Yeah, all of the EU, the so-called European Union. It's not just Western Europe, it's Eastern Europe, Moldova, the Poles, they're very anti-Russian. The Baltics up there, Moldavia, very anti-Russian. So you have a union of the former East European Empire of Russia, of the Soviet Union, is now against Russia, aligned with us. So, the Warsaw Pact disappeared with the Soviet Union, and they joined NATO. So that's, but you see, these are very fragile countries, very fragile. The Western European countries, none of them have the support of the people. They're all minority governments. And some of the Eastern ones, with the exception of Hungary, are in trouble. In Moldavia, the woman who's the president or whatever they're called, she's running around and arresting all of the opposition. So the notion that they're democracies is silly, and the governments seem to neglect the interests of their own people and are all protective of the immigrant invaders. This is a situation now in England. It's become absurd, where a British citizen who waves the British flag gets arrested. That's the latest. In the news today. A young girl drapes a British flag off the balcony of a public building, and the police come and manhandle her and arrest her, carry off, and take the flag away. So you can't even fly.
Sorry for interrupting you, but when you're talking about Europe funding what's going on, funding and helping Ukraine and buying weapons to Ukraine, who's going to pay for that? How how do you find the economy of Europe? Are they capable of doing this, or they're somehow delusional about their economic power?
Well, they can pay for it. They just can't pay for something else. So something else would be cut, or else they'll pay for it in some inflationary manner. I don't think this is Trump's concern. Trump's concern is he wants to get us out of it, I think, because he expects we've got another war task. and that handling too many wars at the same time is no way. Look, if he's at war with Iran and Russia at the same time, how can he pretend he's a peacemaker, or he's gonna? How can he pursue the Nobel Prize for Peace? So clearly, he's just thinking of sequencing the wars, passing them off to somebody else, and it's hard to do, like I've just explained, because of the military security complex. He has to get out of it without hurting their profits. So he's just trying to dump all of that into the lap of the Europeans. I don't know why the Europeans are interested in continuing the war against Ukraine. I don't know what it may be political theater. I just don't know why. Or maybe they think, okay, well, if we're funding the war, then we'll get all the subsidies and bribes and payoffs that the Americans are getting from the military security complex. Instead, we'll get it. And it may well be all the European leaders are imagining they're going to have multi millions and bribes and payoffs and a comfortable retirement. It could be as simple as that. The European leaders, if this is what they're thinking, they're not going to care what the citizens of the countries have to give up in order to pay the war.
Paul, I think one of the biggest problem, as you mentioned, with the foreign policy of the United States is the military-industrial complex. But how long they can continue with this sort of mindset? Because it's a trap. It's a huge trap for the U.S. foreign policy. If they continue this way, China doesn't need to do anything. Russia doesn't need to do anything. The United States is destroying itself.
That's
And
right.
look at India today. Look at Brazil today. It's not about India and Brazil going against the United States. It's about the way that the United States is behaving toward these countries.
That's correct. Exactly correct, Nima. And I think if you're asking how can this be, remember Larry just said it's the arrogance. And they look in the mirror and they say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, I'm the fairest one of all." And so it's a lack of self-realization. It's the unreality in which the entire West lives. It's become increasingly disconnected from real events. And you're absolutely correct. Brazil and India didn't decide to be aggressive toward us. We are the source of aggression toward them, threats and all that. And so it makes it easier for Russia and BRICS. So it may well be that a country that thinks of itself as hegemonic, and this, of course, it's not just for the 30 years that the neoconservatives have ruled American foreign policy. That's a long time to indoctrinate people into a hegemonic attitude. But it's gone on for decades before that. The American liberal, they all believed that we were exceptional. We were an exceptional people, exceptional country. And this gave us special privileges and a role in leading the world. So the basis for the neoconservative hegemony was already there. It had been there for decades. And Wolfowitz just put a very concise few words to wrap it up. So that's, I think, the situation.
Paul, what would you say to the Trump administration if they ask you what would be the solution to deal with China, to deal with Iran and Russia? What is your main point to be to let them know about the main issue that that they can consider?
Well, the main issue is that all of this American hostility toward others is cutting us out of all the business deals. It's not just diminishing the reach of the dollar as world reserve currency and thereby eventually going to make it impossible to finance that massive deficit or national debt. It's also preventing us from the connections to be part of this emerging economic order in the East and apparently in the South. So we are cutting ourselves out of the newest and most strong and far-reaching kind of economic development. We're mired at home, we're stuck with Europe, and these are not vibrant economies. And so it's I would say if I was Trump, I'd try to find some people aware of that, who are Americans, aware of that, and start bringing in senators, congressmen, policymakers, professors, newsmen, and explaining that we're eliminating ourselves from the world that's developing, that a new world is developing. It's our fault. We pushed them out with threats and sanctions and wars. And we've excluded ourselves, and that this is not something that works for us. It works in the intermediate period for the military security complex and for the Israel lobby, but it doesn't work for us at all. And in the long run, it destroys us because we simply excluded. That's what I would do if I was Trump. And just start holding these meetings and I don't know that it would have any effect. The American population is very insouciant. That's a word I use a lot. It means they're just cavalierly uninvolved. They're negligent. And even if they weren't, it's not clear to me the American population has any say about anything. They can elect people, but those people are not controlled by those who elect them. They're controlled by those who finance them. And those are the special interests that actually rule.
Something bigger than that is going on with the foreign policy. I want to stay focused on that. What's going on? Those people who voted for Donald Trump, they wanted to end the conflict in Ukraine. They wanted to do something with the case of the Middle East, the case of Palestinians. And Donald Trump didn't do anything. And so far, we have no outcome. And there is no end to the war in Ukraine. The Middle East is getting worse. Israel attacked Yemen and killed the prime minister together with his cabinet members. And we see Donald Trump moving toward Venezuela. What is that all about? What do they want from Venezuela?
Well, it's what I've been talking about. It's the military security complex. It's the Israel lobby. Trump can't do anything about Palestine without crossing the Israel lobby. He can't say the war's over in Ukraine, we're not funding it anymore, we're not participating, we've gone home. The military security complex is too strong. He can't do that. Every president who has tried to rein in the military security complex by making peace with enemies. Kennedy was shot down. Nixon was destroyed with Watergate, which was an organized CIA scheme to get rid of him because he was making all kinds of arms control agreements with the Soviets. He had opened to China, so they were losing another enemy that they were hoping to make bigger and bigger. You know, you can't take them all; they get rid of you. So this is the trouble. This is why I'm so concerned when we end up in a nuclear war, because you simply can't. The president of the United States isn't powerful enough to normalize relations with enemies, because that cuts against the interest of the military security complex. You not only have all of the private armaments makers and all of the Pentagon's bases and wants. You've also got the security agencies. You know, you got the CIA, you got the NSA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. Altogether, there's 15 or 16, maybe more, of these agencies. You know, there's one in the State Department. These are institutionalized power. This is real power. It's institutionalized. Look at all the trouble the Trump administration is having just in firing people that need to be fired. Each time it's a major issue. And so it's the notion that the elected authorities are powerful is wrong. They are dependent on the campaign contributions, and therefore they are in service to those who make the campaign contributions. And they are in service to those who can control their image in the media, their persona, and the people who can describe them. And once you get a bad description, you're finished. You know, the media could turn any member of the House, the Senate, or the president into a pedophile just by repeating it. Or they could turn him into somebody who murdered his way to the top just by repeating it. And the people who challenged it would be demonized for protecting a criminal. This is the real way. This is the real way the system works. And it's hard for people to understand that and accept it. They don't like to think they're in such a vulnerable position. It's scary.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Paul, for being with us today. Great pleasure, as
Well,
always.
yes.
And we're going to keep it at 11 a.m. because, yeah.
All right, send me the URL.
I'm going to send it to you.
Okay.
See you soon. Bye-bye.